At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes. At the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or dsw.com today and let us surprise you.
Hello and welcome to Fresh Take from What Fresh Hell, Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Margaret, and today I am talking to Dr. Alok Kanojia, otherwise known as Dr. K. He is a former gaming addict and Harvard-trained psychiatrist who has developed evidence-based programs that help tens of thousands of gamers overcome their addiction and reclaim their attention and time from the technologies that consume it. He is the author of How to Raise a Healthy Gamer, an excellent book that I will be dog-earing throughout the year. And that is on sale now. Welcome, Dr. K. Thanks so much for talking to me.
Thank you so much for having me, Margaret.
Let's talk. We do some high level. We're not afraid of brain science here on the podcast. So let's start a little bit with, as you do in the book, the addictive properties of these games, how they work and how they're kind of specifically targeting our brains to want to play more and more.
Absolutely. So it's a great thing to start with and understand. So when most people think about video gaming, we think about dopamine. So dopamine is the neurotransmitter in our brain that is responsible for pleasure, as well as behavioral reinforcement and anticipation and craving. So if I do something that is fun, I enjoy it, and then my brain wants it again. And this is where a lot of parents think that, okay, so like it's about dopamine, my kids are kind of addicted. But if you look at the science of addiction, what we find is that pleasure is not enough to addict someone. So all addictive substances or behaviors do two things. One is give pleasure, and the second is take away pain. And what we tend to find, especially with gaming, is that it's very good at the latter. So we know that playing a video game will suppress our amygdala and our limbic system. So these are the parts of our brain that experience negative emotions. So people will use gaming as an escape, like I certainly did. So I sort of fell into this trap where I was failing out of college. And the thought of failing out of college was so shaming. And like, I didn't know how to fix it, right? Because once you get an F on a transcript, technically, like, you can't fix it. Like, that's never going to go away. Like, your GPA is permanently decreased.
This will go on your permanent record, as they used to tell us as kids. Yep.
So there's no coming back from that. So then the negative emotion from that, the only choice I had was to play a game. And then while I'm playing the game, I forget all the negativity. And so over time, what we're seeing is that game designers are either intentionally or stumbling upon more and more neuroscience kind of vulnerabilities that games will prey on. So it's giving pleasure, and we explain this a lot in How to Raise a Healthy Gamer. So giving pleasure, removing pain. And this is what's also really confusing for a lot of parents, because they'll notice that their child is playing, but they're not like laughing, right? They're not like having a great time. They seem to be almost zombie mode. And that's because the brain really strives for that emotional suppression. And it almost gives kids like an artificial sense. It's not really tranquility, but it's like a numbness is a better way to put it.
Yeah, I thought this was really interesting because I definitely was tuned into like, oh, it's reward and you're like a mouse hitting the lever. But what is interesting, and I, can apply it to my own Candy Crush addiction, is that I noticed at some point that Candy Crush changed. There's a little thing that comes up. It says like crush your stress away or something. When they're billing it as a calming agent. And it really is that it allows you to turn your brain off. And all of us have that feeling, and maybe more so since the pandemic, of like just kind of the gaping maw of fear that kind of is under the rotten floorboards of our life at all times. And it's like, oh, I don't have to think about that because I've got to crush this candy.
Yeah, it's so well put. I mean, there are even studies that show that people who have been through traumatic events, if they play Tetris, there's a really famous study.
Oh, Tetris is the best for this.
And it turns out that it actually protects people from potentially developing PTSD because it does numb the mind. So there are even situations where, we can take advantage of this principle. The challenge is that for a lot of kids, especially, they don't know how to take advantage of video games. Video games take advantage of them. And the more that games are evolving, the more we're seeing that it kind of takes advantage of like more and more neuroscientific vulnerabilities.
So let's start there, because we often like on the podcast in kind of section 1 to set up the problem. So are video games, I guess my first question is this issue of addiction, that I feel like addiction, it feels to people maybe it's used for too many different things. Like, can you actually be addicted to video games in the same way that we think of someone being addicted to cigarettes, let's say?
Yeah, I think the answer is absolutely yes. There's some debate in the academic psychiatric community about whether it's truly an addiction or not. But I think from a neuroscience standpoint, like, it's a no-brainer. So let's understand a couple of things. The first thing about defining an addiction is that it should come with an impairment of function. So any addictive substance. So how do you know whether you're addicted to alcohol or it's like just, 2 glasses of wine at night and that's like a healthy way to de-stress? So the question is, whatever the behavior is, whatever the substance is, does it interfere with your life in some way? So does it impact your professional life, your academic life, your relationships, your physical health, or your mental health? And what we see with gaming is that absolutely, yes, it can impair all of those things.
That's a check. Yep, that's a yes.
And so we also know from a neuroscience perspective that if you look at brain scan studies and things like that, we see sort of these 3 phases of addiction that can absolutely happen in video games. So phase number 1 is it gives you pleasure, and that's it. So that's like the early stage. When you first start playing a game, it's just fun. The second phase starts to set in where you develop tolerance to the pleasure. So it's not really fun anymore, but it is suppressing emotional circuitry. So it's kind of still, it's not so much fun, but it's an escape. And then we get into the third phase where we sort of get trapped, where that's our primary way of managing emotions. And that's what really makes an unhealthy gamer, is when we start to use video games not as a form of recreation or an adjunct to our life, but when it starts replacing things in our life. And that's what we really focus on, is helping people rebuild lives that are worth living so that the video games can be on the side.
Right. And for parents who are listening who don't maybe know where they are in those 3 steps, are there specific guidelines, guideposts that they look to? What do you say to a parent who says, I'm not sure where I am in those 3?
Yes, it's very, very common for parents to not know. And that's where we absolutely provide guidelines. But let's take a step back and just think about the big picture. So frankly, in my opinion, this doesn't really sound right. It doesn't quite matter, because even if your kid is severely addicted, moderately addicted, mildly addicted, not addicted, you as a parent still have a responsibility to help them develop a healthier relationship with technology, no matter where they are in the spectrum. And that's what we really focus on.
That makes sense. So it doesn't necessarily, it fits for all gamers, basically, this philosophy. Yeah,
absolutely. Right. And that's the goal of the book. It's not just about conquering addiction. It absolutely includes that. But even if your child is not quite addicted, but has a vulnerability, we want to equip parents with the tools necessary so that they can be vigilant, so it does not become a problem.
Let's talk about games. Are all games created equal? Are we talking about, are there specific, because I think that we as parents, I hear a lot of people talking about first-person shooter games. That's a different category than, say, Candy Crush, which may seem harmless. How do you talk to parents about kind of categories of games, and are all video games created equal?
So all video games are not created equal, but it's not that there is an objective spectrum that some games are better and some games are worse. So there's some really fascinating research out of University of Toronto that shows that human beings have different personalities.
Shocking.
And different personalities gravitate towards different kinds of games. So for example, there's a kind of game called a massively multiplayer online RPG. So World of Warcraft was very, very famous about 10 years ago. And we know that kids on the autism spectrum are like 50% more likely to have behavioral problems if they play MMORPGs. We know that some kids will get addicted to first-person shooter games. Some people, like women, especially girls, will get addicted to games that have more of a community or social element to them. So it's not that one is objectively worse than the other, I mean, I do think that there are, in general, healthier games and in general, more addictive games that use a lot of predatory mechanics like loot boxes and microtransactions and very addictive game loops. Gotcha games that's even the category what they're called. So there are better and worse, but what my experience has been is that it's very individualized. And it's not like, the solution. I've never seen a solution. I've worked with hundreds of gamers at this point. We at Healthy Gamer have worked at tens of thousands of gamers. And the solution has never been stop playing this game and start playing this game.
Play something else. It's an attitude that goes with how you approach gaming in general.
Absolutely. So the same games that I was addicted to and failed out of college with, I still play those same games today, but in a far healthier way.
I am talking to Dr. K, who is the author of How to Raise a Healthy Gamer. And when we come back, we're going to start talking about how to talk to your gamer.
Hellions, it's time for some spring cleaning, and I don't just mean the coat closets. Doing your financial spring cleaning can actually be super easy when you let Monarch do your financial spring cleaning for you. One dashboard that gets your entire financial life organized. No more clutter, no more mess, no more logins scattered everywhere, just accounts, investments, property, and more, all in one place. Get your first year of Monarch for half off, just $50 with promo code FRESH. Monarch allows you to look not only at what you've already spent, but also to plan for the future. With Monarch, you can set savings goals, plan for big purchases, and notice spending trends before they become a problem. I can generate cash flow reports that show me what we spent this quarter, this month, what we're probably going to spend next month, and feel prepared, organized, and knowing how to plan for the future. No more surprises and a lot more clarity. Try Monarch. Use code FRESH at monarch.com to get your first year half off at just $50. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code FRESH.
Amy, let me tell you about a magical place that is so exactly designed to be enclosed space, year-round fun for the whole family that I bet you already know what I'm going to say before I even say the name. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great Wolf Lodge. You got it, Amy.
My kids loved Great Wolf Lodge when we went. You probably already know that it has a huge indoor water park with a wave pool, lazy river, a bunch of massive water slides. But then your pack can hit the other attractions because wait, there's more.
Great Wolf Lodge has adventure-packed attractions like Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, plus the Northern Lights Arcade. Spent some quality time there, so your kid who loves the lazy river and your kid who loves fantasy games will both have a great time.
Great Wolf Lodge also offers great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. Unpack the car once and you're settled in to have fun. And with 22 lodges across the country, you're always a short drive away from adventure.
We've both had such great times at Great Wolf Lodge, so bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack. So we've heard part 1. We're thinking to ourselves, okay, I get it. We got some gaming problems going on at my house. And this book, for everyone listening, it's extremely well structured. I feel like it's chapter by chapter. It kind of lays out, it's like a What Fresh Hell podcast book. It lays out the problem. And then we start to talk about how we start having these conversations with our kids. And you start by talking about assessing your child's readiness for change. We kind of started the conversation at where this problem might be. And I guess, where do you start the conversation with kids about gaming and where they may need to start?
Yeah, so it's a beautiful question. So I think let's take a step back and kind of think a little bit about our approach, which is oftentimes confusing for parents or surprising, because a lot of parents will look at their child gaming, and they're like, how do I get them to stop? And one of the core features that I think has made our program so successful is when you as a parent try to get your kid to stop, chances are your kid will resist you. And so you can try to force them, but basically like it's a war between you and your child. And this, even if you succeed, it comes at a very high cost. You have to be constantly vigilant. You know, their heart isn't in it. It's kind of like you're forcing them to do something. And I'm sure that your listeners all know that getting your kid excited about doing the right thing is the best way to parent. So we start in a very interesting way. And this is what I kind of have to do is in addiction psychiatry. So I have patients who come into my office who are addicted to stuff. And I don't control their lives. Like, I have to convince them to stop drinking, right? They have to want to stop drinking because they see me 1 hour a week, and the rest of the week they have to police themselves. So we use those same evidence-based techniques with our children. And it starts by talking to your child about what they think about gaming. And one of the biggest problems that parents run into is that children can never admit that they have a problem because the parent will use it as ammunition to take the game away.
It's like a defensiveness, right? That like, don't come for my thing, right?
And parents are just perplexed. They're like, how can they not see that this is causing a problem? And they're working so hard to convince them. And the more that your child knows it's a problem, the more unconvinced they will be, as long as they feel unsafe.
So it matters where we start this conversation, because we don't want the conversation to start at going to our corners in threat mode, basically.
Absolutely. Beautifully said, Margaret. So that's why when we start with what we recommend is take at least 1 month to not impose any limits. Just talk to your child about their understanding about gaming. Really try to learn. And this really works wonders. It disarms a lot of defensiveness. We'll even tell parents, we counsel parents, like, and there's a lot of detailed dialogue and stuff that parents can sort of build off of, that, you tell your kid that for the next month, I want to talk to you once a week for about half an hour to an hour just to better understand gaming. And then at the end of that month, hopefully we can decide to make some changes, but like, I'm not going to change anything for a month. And this is really shocking to parents and kids. They're like, what is this? But the whole point is that we want to create dialogue. We want to create a team.
It's interesting. We've talked to a lot of people not about gaming. And I think of Dr. Lynetta Willis, who we talked to about, it's getting on the same side of the net of the problem. It's you and I against a problem. She talks about it in marriage, basically. But you have a very similar philosophy in the book that, hey, video games are becoming a problem in our family structure or in our life structure. So how are you and I, child of mine and I, going to reckon with the problem of video games, as opposed to I'm on this side of the net and child and video games are on the other side of the net and I'm battling both of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is something we outlined, and it's like you're 100% correct, and I agree 100%.
It's foundational to parenting, this idea of the more we can be you and I against a problem child, the better results we're going to have versus me and child and I are fighting.
Yeah. And I mean, we've seen crazy cases of, I've had parents desperate calling me that, they locked up the power cord to the PlayStation. And then the child learned how to pick locks on YouTube and would go downstairs at 1 a.m, pick the lock, and play from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. And so as long as your child is not on board, which a lot of parents think is impossible, they're like, how can my child ever be on board on cutting back on their gaming? And what we tend to find is, literally, Healthy Gamer was created because we had literally millions of gamers who wanted to play fewer video games, and they just didn't know how. And the key thing is that once you and your child are on the same team, that makes it's like night and day. Once y'all are working together to tackle a problem.
Yeah. And this makes sense for us because we've talked about it in so many different realms, from the way we feed our kids, the way we interact with our kids in school, that we want it to say, hey, this is a problem, or this is not aligning with the values of our family structure, or this is not working because you're crying every day before you have to go to school. Like, let's figure out this problem. Let's you and I be partners against this problem. Now, are there cases where you see, there must be, I'm thinking of people who are listening and saying, but my kid would say video games are never the problem. Video games are great. There's no such thing. How do we get our kids to conceive of video games as a problem? Yeah,
so that is such a great question. And you're saying you can imagine that there are kids out there who will say they aren't a problem. My experience has been that 100% of kids will say that
they're not a problem. Right. Yeah. I love them. They're fun. It's great. This is how I hang with my friends. This is a new thing because I grew up on the cusp of video. We had an Atari. I'm dating myself. I grew up on the cusp of video games, but now I think it's gotten so much more confusing for parents because maybe it is social time. They are hanging out with their friends. Like, I'm completely lost in what is hanging with friends and what is just numbing in front of a video game.
I mean, and this is why parents they're at a loss of how to proceed, because all of our standard tactics as parents don't work with video games. These are my social life. That's not the worst. We've even had kids who say, Mom, Dad, you're like, okay, you got to stop playing video games because your grades need to be good. Because why do my grades need to be good? So you can go to college, so you can get a job, so you can support a family. They're like, oh, no, Mom, Dad, y'all don't understand. I'm going to be a professional gamer. I'm going to be a streamer.
Oh, that kid who won $3 million playing Fortnite has ruined all of our lives.
So all of these standard things don't work, right? The kids say, I want to go pro. And now you're confused. It's like, hold on a second. Do I have a child prodigy who could be making millions of dollars a year?
Right.
We've worked with gamers parents who have hired coaches for their children so that they can become...
I know a kid who's on their college sports team playing video games.
Absolutely. You can get scholarships, right? So the kid comes to you and they're like, that doesn't work like that. It's not bad for me. It's good for me.
Right.
So now parents get confused. They're like, what do we do? And that's why it works. We've seen all of it. I've worked professionally with esports teams as well. Like we have so much experience with this. So let's understand. So the key thing to understand is that when people get addicted to video games, they are fulfilling certain neuroscientific and psychological needs. This is how games have become more addictive over time. So like you said, back in the days of Atari, maybe we got a little bit of dopamine here or there, but there's no sense of professional success. There's no sense of like, this makes me proud of who I am. There's no sense of community and friendship. So the reason games have gotten more addictive is because they are actually fulfilling more of our psychological needs. And so this is also what confuses parents, because when you take the game away, you are getting such a weird amount of resistance, because you're not just taking their game away, you're taking away their career, you're taking away their social circle. And that's why you get twice or 3 times as much resistance as you would expect when you took away their Legos, right? So if we look at their toys, there's a discrepancy. It's weird. Games are so much more addictive. And so interestingly enough, what tends to work incredibly well is when you talk to your children and you ask them, what do you like about the video game? What does the game do for you? And then the child will say, let's say we're talking about a high school kid, so common, who doesn't have many friends, is getting bullied, is maybe going through puberty and has acne and doesn't feel confident about the way they look. So you look at their social options. I can go to school. I can be bullied. People see the way that I look. My voice is cracking. It's very mortifying. I was like that. And then there's the video game where you get to create your own avatar. You can be as sexy as you want, right? You get to decide who you get to hang out with. And at school, what are your options? You have options from maybe 100 kids, maybe a couple hundred kids. But on the internet, you have access to billions of people. And you can find the dozen people who like the same shows you do, are empathic. You can connect with them. They like the same games. You guys all laugh at the same jokes. And so why would a child choose real life over this online community? The beautiful thing is that once you get to that, you can talk to your child about, okay, let's play this tape through to the end. So what does this mean for your life? Do you want friends in the real world? And this is where, if you've done kind of rolled with resistance properly and created a non-judgmental safe space, the child will say, absolutely yes. If I could get this in the real world, I would want it. The whole reason I like the video game is because I can't get it in the real world. And then we get to a beautiful moment, because that's when we say, okay, let's see what we can figure out. Let's see if we can move things forward in the real world in some way. I know it's going to be hard, but let's see if we can foster your relationships. And then we get to a beautiful point where both of y'all are actually working towards the same goal. Even the reason they're playing the video game is to create a sense of community and connection with other people. That same drive, which is sending them to the video game, we can now harness that drive and move them back into the real world. And when that same drive that is pushing them into the video game gets harnessed and redirected in the right way, that's when we see a lot of the combat go down. That's when we see 2 people on the same team, because now we're all on the same team. Let's try to help you create friends in real life.
I am talking to Dr. Alok Kanojia, otherwise known as Dr. K, and he is the author of How to Raise a Healthy Gamer. And we're going to talk when we get back about implementing what we're talking about now. How does it actually look to set these boundaries with gamers?
Amy, when I'm having a good hair day, it usually makes my whole day better. And that's why on every day, I'm taking Nutrafol.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand, and it's the #1 hair growth supplement brand personally used by dermatologists. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are peer-reviewed, NSF certified for sport, and clinically tested.
Nutrafol offers multiple formulas for men and women, tailored to different life stages and lifestyle factors, so you get support that's actually right for you. Adding Nutrafol to your daily routine is easy. Order online, no prescription needed, with automated deliveries and free shipping to keep you on track.
Let your hair be one less thing to worry about. See visibly thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol.
For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you visit Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LAUGHING.
That's Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code LAUGHING. All my kids learned to swim when they were little. It was super important to me that they be confident and safe in the water. There was only one problem with that: taking them to swim lessons. I mean, the pools were freezing. There were always cranky adults doing laps right there. And it was definitely not, for any of us, what you would call fun.
Amy, heard. But now there's Goldfish Swim School. Goldfish takes a really thoughtful approach to swim lessons, combining research-based teaching with a warm, kid-friendly environment that actually helps kids thrive in the water.
Every detail at Goldfish is thoughtfully designed to create a golden experience, from shiver-free, warm indoor pools to comfy waiting areas for parents to professionally trained lifeguards on deck.
Goldfish uses an approach called the science of swim play, which combines guided play with proven teaching techniques to help kids learn to swim, build water safety skills, and gain confidence, all at their own pace. Lessons are designed to meet kids exactly where they're at.
If you've been thinking about swim lessons or just wondering where to start, this is a great opportunity. Right now, Goldfish Swim School is offering a waived membership plus your child's first lesson free at participating locations.
Just visit goldfishswimschool.com/free to find a location near you and enroll using promo code FREE.
That's goldfishswimschool.com/free, promo code FREE.
So we understand that I really like the idea that these skills that you're working on, and you talk in the book, which I think is always really important, about how this affects kids with different needs, kids with different personality set points. And I do think, and I have seen for kids who struggle socially and kids on the spectrum, that communication is easier within the games, and that in some ways for my family, it's been a positive. Like, it's been a way to exercise certain skills, but then we have to translate those skills into real world settings, because we don't, maybe we will someday, but for now, we're still not living in the metaverse. We're not living with the goggles on and just talking to imaginary or people outside of ourselves. And so how do we start to set up boundaries that say, hey, this may be giving us some good skills in this world, but this is not the world, and translating and bridging those skills and getting off the games and back maybe into real life?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. So we find that boundary setting, which we have a whole section in the book about, how to set boundaries. And we've had hundreds of our parents go through our program, and it works incredibly well. So one of the most confusing things for a lot of parents is that the way that they set boundaries is actually sabotaging their progress.
Yeah, talk about that, because I thought this was really interesting.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So let's just take the classic scenario. Okay, so you tell your kid it's bedtime, right? So bedtime is at 10 p.m. You tell them at like 8:30 after they're going up after dinner, right? So you're like, bedtime is at 10 o'clock. And they say, okay, I understand. And then you remind them again at 9:30, hey, bedtime is soon. Like, you should probably stop. They say, sure. 9:55 rolls around. You're like, bedtime. And they're like, yeah, I hear you. Right. And then 10:15, hey, bedtime was 15 minutes ago. 10:30 rolls around, 10:45 rolls around, 11 o'clock rolls around. You are a parent. You have things to do outside of policing your child's gaming. You may have a job, you have a household to run, you have bills to pay, you have other kids, you have sick family members, got to take care of your dog, got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. So then you go up at 11 o'clock and you say, enough is enough. No games for a week. So we're emotional. We're really, frustrated. This creates somewhat of a fight. And then finally you get them to bed, and it took so much energy to put them to bed. Now, a lot of parents think that they have they're exasperated, but they think this is the only option that I've got. But if you really look at the science of behavioral reinforcement, you've made things worse, not better. The first thing is you told them 15 times that they need to go to bed and they did not listen to you. So what are you actually reinforcing? You're reinforcing that 1 out of 15 times they need to listen to you, but the other 14 you can be ignored because there's no consequence for ignoring what you do. What we find with so many parents is that they are training their children to ignore what they say.
We have had a guest on the podcast who is a dog trainer who talks about this very thing, that you train a dog to sit when you say sit, not when you say sit, 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 sit. And that's right. It's one time, not 15 times.
The next thing that you've done is you've set a boundary when you yourself are emotional. So then what's happened is when you say no games for a week, have you thought about all the things that you need to do that week? Are you traveling for work? Is a babysitter coming? Is this happening? Is that happening? Are you going to be able to enforce that boundary? And oftentimes what parents will do is in a moment of frustration, they will set a boundary that they don't have the capability of enforcing.
Right. This is like the time I told my kids we're never going outside again ever. It's actually not a great boundary, as it turns out. But these things come out of our mouths when we're emotional.
Absolutely. And so then now let's think about it from the kid's perspective. So mom said never going outside again. And then when you go outside again, what does the child learn about whether your boundaries need to be respected or not?
Not so much.
Not so much. So you're actually training your children to ignore your words, which is what's so frustrating. And it feels like everything is a fight. So oftentimes what we tell parents to do is really think through boundary reinforcement, really calmly decide with your child. And oftentimes parents are loath to do this because it means that there is less gaming. I mean, there's more gaming than they would feel happy with. And that's actually okay. So what we sort of recommend is that you start small, but the main thing that you need to do is train your child to listen to your words. And so we recommend something called the 25% rule, which is this is where you are. Let's say this is the goal that you have. Cut that goal in half and cut it in half again. And that's where you should start. And over time, what we want is boundaries that are enforced 100%. And your child needs to learn that your word is law. And then over time, once they learn that lesson, then you can set additional boundaries over time. So this is where we start small. So we recommend that parents pick the smallest hill that they are willing to die on, right? So you pick a tiny little thing, which is you're going to put your shoes away before you start playing a video game, something so small. And then over time, you add to that. And then we're also working with their resistance at the same time. And what we'll tend to see is within about 6 months to a year, like the household will have completely transformed.
This is something that we talk about a lot. And I think it's very well explained in the book that what happens a lot with children is that we hear a rule, right? Like, well, go in and put them back in bed and don't engage or whatever it happens to be. And then people are like, I tried, it doesn't work. That it's got to be a month of effort before you even gauge whether or not it's working. And I think that the tactics in this book are very much that way, that this is about consistency. It's not about a rule that's going to change everything overnight.
Absolutely. And that's also why we say, so if you look at a change, the smaller the change is, the faster it'll happen.
That's smart. And then you get the small win and it convinces you, oh, this is going to work.
Absolutely. Right. So, and this is where we also talk a lot about the work that parents need to do on themselves, because if your child is failing out and you want them to get A's, D's is progress. But the challenge is that oftentimes as parents, progress is insufficient for us. So we actually don't reinforce it. We're like, this is not enough. This is not enough. This is not enough.
Right. Our life is like January at the gym. It's like, well, I'm going to go get in shape. And then by January 15th, you're like, oh, I'm not in shape. Never mind. I'll just forget about that.
So small wins over time. So a 1% change in direction over the course of, let's say, traveling 1,000 miles will end you up in a completely different place. And that's what we find really works.
And another thing I just want to underline, because I have found this is the big difference maker in my home, is engaging your child. Like having conversations. For us, it became like we're rushing home to just get on screens and do our video games. And then what about homework? And it's dinner and it's a wrestling match. And having a conversation in our home that was, how long do you think you need to decompress at the end of school? And we kind of decided at 4:30, they get home at 3:30. That's an hour. That works well. But that now I find myself in a phase where I can just look at my watch and say, guys, it's 4:35. And they're like, oh, that's right. We did make this agreement to get off screens. And it's like they have a certain level of buy-in about 4:30 that we're not fighting about video games anymore. I'm just saying, or if I have to go out even, I'll say, keep an eye on the clock, at 4:30. Just watch for 4:30. 4:30 means it's screen. They decided it, and somehow the yoke of that is so much lighter than me yelling at everybody about screens.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that so many parents find unbelievable, that your child would regulate themselves. But that's literally the point, right? So the goal is to raise a healthy gamer. The goal is to prepare your child for a world where they will have to regulate their own technology usage, right? 20 years old, 30 years old, technology is going to get more addictive over time. So we really want to teach them how to restrain themselves instead of imposing artificial restrictions as a parent. Because then the moment that the parenting goes away, they'll go crazy. So we have to teach them how to be motivated themselves. And that's what we find. And your story is literally what we see time and time and time again, which is when the kid is involved in the process, they have buy-in instead of being like the enemy. And so they'll be self-motivated, which sounds perplexing to parents.
Yeah. But it works. It really does. Dr. K, there's so much more in this book. Everyone check out How to Raise a Healthy Gamer. It's on sale now, as we say, wherever books are sold. Whereas where do we find the book? People know where to find a book in 2024, but tell our audience where else they can find you and your work, because I know this resonated with a lot of people today.
Sure. Yeah. So we have a YouTube channel, Healthy Gamer GG, where, we upload videos frequently. It's interesting because our core audience is actually your kids. So about 5 million of people's kids watch us every month, but we do have a lot of great stuff for parents. So if you better want to understand your children, and we've got some great content on there for parents, so just check out Healthy Gamer GG on YouTube or check out our website, healthygamer.gg, and there's a parenting section in there.
Awesome. And the book, How to Raise a Healthy Gamer, is on sale now. Dr. K, thanks so much for talking to me today.
Thank you so much, Margaret. Take care.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.